When the wind blows cold on the shores of Lake Erie, the Queen City moans her sad, lonely song. Her streets are empty, but for handfuls of scattered souls, scurrying to escape the chill. Most are gathered at the warm watering holes that garnish every street corner, offering respite for the weary. The air hangs thick and is warmed by the hot takes that resound from the wooden walls. We find ourselves on the doorstep of such a place, with the champions of mediocrity about to set off on another long-winded journey. The windows are already beginning to fog with the balmy bloviations. As the door creaks open, a rush of warm air ushers the velvet voices of the 716 Sports Podcast.
"716 Sports Podcast" back here with you, talking about that ice-based sport that we played down at the arena, talking about the Buffalo Sabres as we wind down here at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 season here, and what a miraculous, wonderful team-building exercise it truly has been. Before we get really into that here, just a quick reminder, guys, if you enjoy what we do, and even if you don't and like clicking things, you can follow us on iTunes. We're the 716 Sports Podcast. You can also follow along on some social media on Facebook, 716 Sports Podcast, on Twitter, at 716 Sport Podcast, and also on Twitter as part of the Grandstand Sports Network. Lucky and to be affiliated and work with so many great podcasts from around the country, covering sports and things you like. Podcasts really the way of the future of how you dissect sports. And if you're sticking around and looking for something else to listen to from us recently, you can find in our feed the Alex Newt story that Bill, Justin, and Eric had some voices in. Truly an amazing story Alex has. UB's all-time leading receiver, friend of the podcast, and his story on how we view pro athletes as kind of these larger-than-life people, but really they face all the same struggles that we do. And it's an amazing piece. Highly recommend checking out Alex Newt's story. And speaking of things that make me sad, the Buffalo Sabres are a hockey team that is winding down their season. And, man, it's been... Is this better or worse than the original Arizona game tank year?
I think it's worse. At least we had something to look forward to that year. You know, there's at least Eichel at the end of the tunnel. One of the two.
The tank year was supposed to be a tank. This year was just everything fell apart.
I was listening to one of our preseason podcasts that we did back in the middle of September, and we were openly talking about this team being a contender for the wild card.
God, how did we miss so bad?
Because we're bad at this.
How did Phil Housley miss so bad?
I was talking about Twitter the other day to somebody, like, there wasn't much turnover on this roster. They actually kind of added more, like, was getting rid of Ennis, it's addition by subtraction, and adding Scandella.
Ennis and Foligno went out. You had Scandella. You thought, and that was the big thing, was we thought that the blue line between the players that they brought in and the coaching staff would create a combination where the defense would be better. And that just wasn't the case. It hasn't been the case. The defense has struggled. Now, there's been injuries to guys like Bogosian and McCabe, and they're not even, like, Josh George isn't even playing anymore, really. They sent out Matt Molson to the line. I mean, Matt Molson was maligned for 2 years. He was gone. They did all this, addition by subtraction, like you said, and it didn't work. There's not the talent here. And now it's so empty, or it was so empty, that it looked like there is no hope on the horizon.
It's weird. It almost seems like Bilesma got more out of this team last year with as less talent or as much as they have now last year than Philly Housley's even coming close to this season. They're not existent some nights. Like, you guys, when you went to the Arizona game, Jeff, they were there physically. I mean,
yeah, that was. I was talking with our friend Chad DiDomenicis on Twitter during that game about how before that game that was the emptiest I've ever seen the KeyBank Center. And I know Nick, you were at the original tank game, and Bill, you were there too, I believe.
Yeah,
the original 3 years ago Arizona tank game. I was at Disney World watching the game, following along on Twitter remotely. You guys had the pleasure of being there in person. That building was empty. It did fill in a little bit.
That was funny that night because you and your brother. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, Jeff, you were in the second most magical place on earth that night. But yeah,
SeaWorld.
so my brother and I, shout out to my brother Michael. Congratulations on your engagement.
She won't be listening.
I know, but he might be. He won't be. But anyway, so my brother decided, he's like, oh, we should just go to the game. Like,
Noted hockey fan.
also noted college basketball enthusiast.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Isn't he winning your bracket challenge?
he is.
I'm just checking.
For the second year in a row. So he was like, oh, let's just go. I'll buy tickets. Let's go to the game. So we had tickets right on the blue line. I don't know if I didn't share. I'll share the picture later. But we were right on the blue line against the glass. And like halfway through the game, I think, Bill, you texted me. You were there with your wife.
Yeah, you texted us.
I
and
texted,
said,
yeah, it said
hey,
there's two seats right behind us.
So my wife and I went down there. It's my 30th birthday, actually.
It may have been, yeah. Well, yeah,
It was, and we just went down there, and we all got to experience together
The true magic of friendship.
Mike Weber's final stand, screaming at the fans, saying that they didn't support the team. Of course, he was wearing the A that day. Real proud of him.
I was supporting the team that day.
Yes, I know you were. But this was a bad. That was bad. This is worse because it doesn't feel like there's anything quite at the end of the tunnel. Now, of course, this can all change if the Sabres win the draft lottery and get that defenseman that is going to apparently be the next
Brady Tkachuk.
That's right. Coming of Bobby Orr. And that's exactly what this team needs. You wonder if in 2014, if the year before Eichel and McDavid, if this team is in a different spot, if they pick first and they end up with Aaron Ekblad instead of Sam Reinhart. I think it's a fair question to wonder about. Not that, I mean, Ekblad.
I think young Samson's actually had a really great last
this has
couple
been his
months.
This has been his best season, I think, as a pro. But Ekblad fills that need on the line where, I mean, there's no doubt he's the number one defenseman on this team if it ended up that way. So we'll see what comes of it. I don't really know what there is to look forward to other than
Bailey, Baptiste, Nylander, and Mittelstadt.
Yeah, well, those are the guys, and that brings us to today's wonderful news where things are all of a sudden looking up a little bit for the Sabres.
Yeah, rather fortuitous. This is like twice in a month we've had news break on a Monday. This never happens. We record Monday nights and everything happens on Tuesday afternoons because of it. Casey Mittelstadt and Will Borgen both signing their entry-level contracts here today to become members of the Buffalo Sabres. So you can shelve your Casey Mittelstadt is the next Jimmy Vesey takes on your Twitters because he has officially signed to play professional hockey for the team that drafted him.
Yep, a lot of concern about that. That was
Happened so fast, too. There wasn't any kind of, like, rumors or anything. Just, like...
10 o'clock on a Monday, boom, we're here.
Casey's like, well, I woke up. Let's play that hockey. Rumored to be back in the lineup as soon as Thursday here in Buffalo per Bottle Reel today. So,
Let's play that hockey. This is Eric's favorite line.
That's right.
To be fair, there
Eric
was,
will actually listen, though, so making the shout out to him actually makes sense, though.
Hi, Eric. So there was a little bit, like, when they got knocked out of, like, not going to the Frozen Four.
Yeah, Minnesota not
and when they
selected.
lost it, when the coach, wasn't coming back, that kind of got everything started. Like, what, he had been there for 18, 19 years?
Something like
in Minnesota.
that. It was a long run.
He was there forever. So maybe that's probably what got everything going. I think we posted on our Facebook page at Casey Watch. We shared something from Two by the Blade. Yeah. We shared an article from them, and I think that's maybe when it got started. But like you said, it did kind of come out of nowhere. There wasn't contract talk, or you didn't have your our vaunted Sabres media. Mike Straw didn't say anything. So.
I mean, meanwhile, Nick's over here creating our favorite mashup of Die by the Blade and Two in the Box called Two by the Blades.
Yeah, it's Two by the Blade. I'm gonna get that one.
We'll get Chad and Chris together on that mashup.
But
I'm
sure they'd love that.
summer.
The thing about Mittelstadt that shows you that he's legit is that everybody considered him to be the number one prospect in college. Well, did his team have a ton of success? No. But you look at the Frozen Four, and 3 of the Final 4 teams played in the Big Ten, which is the conference Minnesota's in. So you got Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan all in this final, in the Frozen Four, along with, I believe, it's Minnesota Duluth.
Yeah, Minnesota.
And, this is a guy that he's going to be instant offense when he comes here. Now, Justin, your issue, rightfully so, is who's going to end up being his line mates.
Yeah, he's coming in as a line 3 center for Jason Botterill. Yeah. I mean, it could work out as long as they play with decent wingers. Like, you could have him with Baptiste and Bailey. or you can have him with Jordan Nolan, Benoit Pouliot, or Devin Gergensons. And you
The
don't
amount
want
of
that.
ice time that Jordan Nolan got in that game I was at last Wednesday made me sick to my stomach. He was on the ice, I felt like every other shift. Maybe I just noticed him more because he was a absolute goddamn turnstile and he refused to shoot the puck. Except for the one that Jordan Nolan's the first player I've ever seen have an empty net with the goalie out of position and fall over backhanding the puck into the net without being touched. It was actually amazing.
Did you want to hear a circus soundtrack behind that as it was happening?
I did. I really did. It was amazing.
That or Benny Hill.
Yeah.
So now, we're going to get 2 home games left. There's Detroit on the 29th, and I believe it's Ottawa on the
3rd or something.
5th. Yeah, something like that. For fan appreciation night. By the way,
If you're there, you should get a free jersey or ticket or something.
well, everybody,
I'm debating going.
everybody gets those Hasek bobbleheads. Those
Which
things
look pretty
are
dope, by the way.
Pretty awesome.
I'm going to go and wear my black, because it's black and red.
Yeah.
I'm going to go wear either
Everybody
my
get your
Holzinger or
goat
my
head
Juno
up.
jersey.
Yeah. No, they look.
I'll
really
meet you
sick.
there in my goat head Richard Schmelik jersey.
I got old Leche Zhitnik, the red one.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, with the
that's
the
amazing.
crossblades.
Yeah.
I love those jerseys.
Yeah,
That's
those are really
amazing.
I don't know if it's going to fit me anymore.
I'm sure.
Just
it'll
we'll,
be
about
we'll,
60
we'll, we'll have
pounds
to
in
go as the Zhitnik and Schmelik pair and be the cool people there.
But, it is 2 opportunities for the home team. I think, if anything, this, maybe Russ Brandon had a small role in this. I don't know. Call me a cynic. But regardless, they got the guy in. And I think that was important because, like you were saying, Jeff, there are so many people that were trying to compare this to something that wasn't even a Sabres issue. They acquired Jimmy Vesey's rights from Nashville because he wasn't going to sign. Like, it was a weird situation, and we boo him now whenever he touches the puck. Not that the Rangers actually came to Buffalo this year because we played our 1 home game at Citi Field. But regardless, if you are a jilted lover like Buffalo sports fans are, you feel like that the next time it's always going to be the same thing. Well, that just wasn't going to be the case with Mittelstadt, and now here he is.
The important thing is that we got Mittelstadt, and now we have. I was kind of negative on Twitter today. Thinking about the wingers going to play with, but that's right now. In the future, it could be really good, and now that the Sabres have 3 very good centers, and that's a recipe for success. And it looks like a lot like the 06-07 Sabres that were very good with 3 great centers.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, 33% of the Sabres roster next year at least is going to be guys who spend at least a good portion of this year in Rochester. Bailey and Baptiste, who are physically already here. I assume C.J. Smith, Kyle Criscolo, maybe Fashing. They got to pull the trigger on Fashing at some point. He can't just be down there forever simmering. And, of course, Gooley. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle who you can play alongside him there. And O'Regan, too, another guy who might be up here next year. 2 games at home with terrible line mates. Maybe all Casey has to do is have 1 good goal between now and the end of the season, and everyone will be drooling over him going into next season. All he has to do is have 1 good game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he had a good year in Minnesota. He had in 34 games played. He had 30 points, and that was on a team that couldn't score. It's not the same University of Minnesota anymore. There's 3 great schools for hockey in that state, in that area. Then the talent just kind of spread so thin now. That's why I think UB should not have a Division I hockey program here, because there's already Canisius, there's already Niagara University. There's just not enough talent in the area, and they would just be no great teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Minnesota. You got Duluth. You got
St.
Minnesota
Cloud
State. You got Mankato. So
he was on a team that really couldn't finish well. He was making plays, but he wasn't getting. He didn't have the finishing touch.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what he'll do with NHL players.
I mean, watching him play in the World Juniors with the talent that was around him there was absolutely incredible.
Being the MVP of a tournament and winning the bronze says something about what you were able to accomplish. And, of course, it's just a short span, but you're playing against the best players in the world.
Right, but it's like
that
watching
level.
Jack in the All-Star game, watching Jack play with a guy like Nikita Kucherov or Austin Matthews.
That's what could happen.
That's who, okay, gotcha. That's who they draft.
Get up
That's
here,
the guy they're
Jordan
looking for.
Nolan.
You better strap that way to your ankles for 20 minutes, Jack, and see if you can do it again.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see him play on a line when. I don't know, is he allowed to go to Rochester? I'm not sure how the CBA rules work with
Jack.
that. No, I'm talking about
Casey.
Mittelstadt.
I don't think you can. I think it's too late in the season. I think you had to have a
Something
game,
about his
a
age
game
or
in the AHL previous to a certain date, and that's why they made a bunch of paper transactions to get guys down
Would
there.
have been awesome to see him play with like Nylander for a few games.
Yeah, there's
I
another
agree.
name that we think that there are pieces down there. we don't know. We need to see them at some point, and that's the frustrating part because even when they come up, it's like they're not doing a whole lot. Like, what are you doing with Bailey? Like, just send him down to Rochester, get him ready for the Calder Cup run.
He's been great up here, but the thing is, he's on an emergency situation right now, so they can't play him every game. He's here just in case someone gets hurt.
Right.
Some weird call-up thing. I was reading about it earlier.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, like that. But that's the frustration as a fan is.
The last week he was playing on line with Baptiste and Erod, and they were
that's right.
Hands down the best line on the ice on both teams. Unbelievable line. They just moved their feet so fast.
Yeah,
they were just.
It's refreshing watching Nick.
Was that the Chicago
chase the
game?
puck?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was. So
it was Nashville. I think.
Nashville. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, they played really well, but lost 4-0.
Yeah, but it was a real emotional.
Pekka was like the difference maker there. He played really good.
The fellow's pretty good. Probably going to win the Vezina this year.
The worst game was the Rangers game when Rob Burris was saying, "Let's just go home. These guys stink."
Big shout out to Lindy Ruffsty on Twitter for giving me my best laugh of the week by cutting out the text box of Rob Burris tips of the game and crowdsourcing them. Yeah. That was amazing.
Also, shout out to the Sabres fans for telling us, well, we outshot them. We had 21 first period shots, but they're up 2-0. Oh. Well, okay, I guess that's something that we outshot them. Shots are, just show us our shots in plus minus and speak to the positives of those. It's frustrating.
Sabres also signed Will Borgen, solid back end player.
Yeah, speaking of what a day, these are two guys who are going to be potentially huge changes to this roster. Two guys that you hope you're going to be saying their names 10 years from now in the blue and gold. So we're not quite soothsayers, and we don't have this level of foresight. But we're going to take the advantage here while we have it and pull from the annals. We have an interview from 2 years ago about Will Borgen. We talked to his coach in college,
Seth Appert
from St. Cloud State, just about the kind of the guy that he is, the player that he is, and
I'm
why.
wrong about that.
Yeah. So what's Seth Appert, the RPI guy?
Yeah.
That's the other guy. I'm gonna
Rob Motzko.
Thank you. There, no, you're good. I tried to kill enough air that you got to the right there. We're gonna edit that in post.
No, we're not.
I know we're not. About who Will Borgen is and why we as Sabres fans should be excited that he, along with Casey Mittelstadt, signed his ELC here today.
And on their team, they have two Sabres prospects in Will Borgen, Team USA World Junior Championship standout, and Judd Peterson is the right wing. And Coach Motzko had some kind words, to say the least, about Will Borgen.
Yeah.
And he's now my favorite Sabres prospect.
Out of nowhere, yeah. Borgen, I think, as we roll this interview here in a second, I think everybody should pay attention because freshmen like this don't necessarily come along all the time when at a major college level, and the Huskies are currently third in the country right now, probable to make the NCAA tournament. So to have a freshman come in and step up like Borgen has done for the Huskies, it's been really impressive. And Peterson's fought through some injuries, but I think Coach did a really nice job of explaining, so I guess we'll just throw it over to that interview right now. And welcome back to the 716 Sports Podcast, joined tonight by the head coach of the St. Cloud State Huskies, Coach Rob Motzko, currently 22-5-1, having a great season, currently third in the country, and he has a couple of Sabres prospects on his team. Coach, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
I appreciate you getting us on there tonight. No problem.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Will Borgen and Judd Peterson. We'll start with Will, who is a right-handed defenseman drafted in the 4th round last season, and also a standout for the U.S. World Junior team. So currently for you guys right now, no goals but 9 assists and a +9. Is that characteristic of his game? Is he more of that stay-at-home defenseman, or is that the kind of game that he could bring to the team here in Buffalo eventually?
Well, I tell you what, probably one of the more interesting stories, and I think, especially for our program in our league, but maybe even all of college hockey, a guy like Will Borgen, who, he's in Moorhead High School a year ago. Traditionally, high school players from Minnesota are going to spend a full year in the United States Hockey League. He went down and played 21 games. And we kind of found ourselves really needing another defenseman, and we knew he was an athlete. and that he'd be able to survive on a big, strong athlete. But I don't think any of us anticipated. I mean, he wasn't even on the radar for the World Junior team. But it was very quick. Very quickly at the start of our season, when practice got going, you're going, this doesn't come around too often. He had that factor, not just with the coaches, but with his teammates. And a lot of the emotions are high, and he got off to a really good start where he could just play against other teams' top players, defend at a high level, get us in transition, good puck decisions. And he's a mean kid. He's a tough hockey player. All the ingredients that, we weren't anticipating. We knew they were there. We just didn't know they were going to come out this quickly. And it was very, very quickly, a few weeks in, we did have to talk with the people, the World Junior team, with Jim Johansson. Said, you got to watch this kid. I mean, this is somebody, this doesn't come around too often. And he just kept getting better. And, I could go on and on, but I think he's pretty much written the story here. He was, he made the team, and not only did he make it, but he was a big part of the success that they had. He was terrific throughout the tournament. He's showing no signs of slowing down. And with all that being said, the great thing about Will Borgen is he's just scratching the surface. There's a whole other level that this young guy's going to hit as he goes through his development.
Yeah, he's 6'2", 190 right now, and by the way, at the World Juniors, 3 assists and a +6 in the 7 games for the States. And when you see a kid that, like you said, he's got that potential, but he's just scratching at it, do you see him getting bigger and more physical, or is it more refinement of his positioning and understanding how to use that body and use that bit of aggression to become an even better defender?
Well, absolutely. The rounding off that athletic ability to defend, to keep, put a team in transition, that toughness you need on the penalty kill, late in periods, late in games, playing against other teams' top players. But there's an offensive side to him as well, and that's the part that is over the next couple of years as he, gets his hips into motion where he can get that shot off and he can join the rush and then he gets more confidence in his offensive ability. I just think that there's a whole other part of his game that's going to blossom that sometimes you just see in spurts right now. He does all the things that makes him a great defensive defenseman, but I think there's going to be more depth to it. I know there's going to be more depth to his game as he goes through this process.
We hear all the time at the pro level how it's hard to say what you have from a defender unless they get about 300 games out there on the ice. We've heard that cliche before. Is it the same in college, or like you said, he's so young? Do you just have it kind of right away and what it is to be a defender at this level?
I think I'm going to go two ways with that. One, and I'm sure don't coach at the pro level. And we've all seen it, that players that do come through the pro systems and the college system, there are that large group of people that need that developmental time. And then there's that special group where they have that it factor. And it's just, it bubbles over. Their talents just come out at a high level. And it's not 300 games that's going to round it off. It's just the process. They're going to explode through the process. I might be putting some pretty high expectations on Will, but he has that type of ability, and with his athletic ability and the pure toughness that he has, this kid could explode. And I think he's kind of doing it. What he's been doing in our program this year.
Do you have a comparison to any past player that you've had or any current NHL defenseman? Not to put the expectations of that individual onto Will, but is there a comp so Sabres fans here in Buffalo can kind of get a rough picture in their head of what Will is bringing to the table?
Well, that's a hard one for me to off the cuff to try to put a comparison. I love this calm and coolness in the defensive zone, able to break the puck out so easily. I had the ability to coach with Paul Martin for a few years, and he was at the University of Minnesota, and it was a different type of players. But Paul had and still has that just ability to control a hockey game with his brain and coolness, and Will has that, but he also has another whole element of this meanness, this toughness, this he can punish you, and you know, and the receiver, I think Truba's a defenseman that you know excelled so hard with the World Junior team and had a great first year in Winnipeg, and there's some comparisons there, and just to throw out a couple names, you know, size, same as those guys, you know, athletic ability. Yes, there's some differences, obvious differences in their ability, but there's just two names that I would throw out.
Sure, those are two great names to hear. We're here with St. Cloud State Huskies head coach.
And there's that blast in the past. That was from 2016.
You had so much more hair back then.
I did?
I don't know.
I think I had less hair.
Did you?
Maybe. I've got a lot of hair.
Yeah.
So
I feel like you've always had a lot of hair since I've known you.
Pretty much.
So how was that kind of like deja vu, that Arizona game last week? Two last place teams fighting for last place again.
That it's falling in Buffalo at that time of the season. Yeah, it was kind of weird in a super depressing way that sucks.
We like to think we're so much better than the Coyotes, but in reality we're in the same holding pattern.
No,
and it's terrible to think about.
No, it's absolutely pathetic, but it is what it is. At least we're not yelling about, I don't know, something ridiculous like saying Connor McDavid is underachieving or something like that. We have our own issues now. Like Jack Eichel doesn't do enough. Fun stuff like that.
Ryan O'Reilly's bad in hockey.
So back around this time, 3 years ago.
2 years ago.
Huh?
Was it in 2016?
2015.
Oh, damn.
Justin can math.
Oh, yeah.
Josh Cooper wrote an article in Yahoo PuckDaddy about how Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel must go to Carolina or Phoenix because they will be wasted and withered away in the crapola franchises of Buffalo and Edmonton. And
I think people took that really well.
Yeah, Buffalo hated him for a while.
This was one of his first debuts.
Yeah, he
on PuckDaddy.
When they asked him to come on today, he said, "Arguably the worst thing I've ever written." And it was fun. He's a cool dude, though. But
friend of the pod, Josh Cooper.
I just thought it was fun. I thought it'd be fun to have him back on because it's still kind of holding true for Eichel. He's kind of wasting away in the Sabres right now. They're pitiful, and he doesn't have anyone to play with, and it doesn't look promising. As we just had Mittelstadt, but he's a center. He's never going to play with Eichel unless it's on a power play. But I just thought it'd be fun to have him on and see what he thought because it still kind of holds true. He's 20. He just turned 21. He's been on the team for 3 years now, and he's been about a point per game player. But
coming off a huge game, recording again on the Monday, on the fresh heels of him having a 2-goal performance and carrying the team on the score sheet past Toronto.
He played sick tonight.
It was amazing.
He loves playing against Austin Matthews, his boy.
He gets up for those games. He really does.
So let's talk to Josh Cooper and reminisce about this article and see what he thinks now about what he wrote 3 years ago. Hey, we're back. We're here with Josh Cooper. Josh, you're now a freelance writer, Josh?
Yeah. Mostly a contributor for LAKings.com. Ran or helped do their insider blog for the month of February. I was actually in Buffalo. I feel awful we never got to connect while I was there. I did go to Dinosaur Barbecue. And I don't know. Well, I mean, like, is that one of those places that's considered overrated to locals?
I was going to say overrated right after you said it. It's pretty overrated.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I enjoyed it. It definitely filled me up. I had the smoked chicken, I think it was, or whatever.
It's funny because Dinosaur started in Syracuse, and then Syracuse claims it their own. Then they went to Rochester, and Rochester claims its own. And then about, 3 or 4 years ago, they moved to Buffalo and opened up their place downtown. But to be honest with you, I think it's the best barbecue. It's one of two best barbecue places in Buffalo. Buffalo was sorely lacking a place like that. So I know it's not absolute world beating, but it does the job for us, I think.
I had a great time. I mean, it's interesting. You go, and maybe this kind of segues into what I think you guys want to talk to me about, was I really enjoyed my time in Buffalo when I was there because but here's why. Um, uh, it's because I feel like you guys have been so beaten down as a hockey market with just so much losing, but you still really care. And that goes a super long way because I do feel like there are some markets that don't quite have that resilience, so to speak. But I mean, you guys really, really care, and it is a true blue American hockey town. I love it. I had a great time there.
It's waning a bit, but yeah, we care.
We cared desperately, and we cared 3 years ago when you wrote that Jack Eichel was not worthy of our fair city, and he ended up here. Gave us some great vines, RIP Vine. And so we just want to talk to you just because, 3 years ago on the 26th was the infamous Arizona-Buffalo tank game. And I don't know how much you remember specifically about that, but it is still something that is debated hotly in the Buffalo area, especially on Twitter. And it seems like a lot of it is truly a mainstream media versus blog rivalry. People were still upset that Sabres fans were essentially cheering against their own team that night. So I'm just curious, just on a whole, before we even begin, what's your philosophy? What do you feel about, fans possibly cheering against their team, but maybe having a more altruistic goal of obtaining a better player that time?
Well, I'm a New York Football Giants fan. And when it became clearly obvious that the season was just not going to work out this year, all I wanted was them to get one of the top 2 picks to draft a quarterback. And now apparently they want Saquon Barkley from what I've read. So look, like as a fan derives from the term fanatic, and I'm pretty sure fanatics are essentially irrational when it comes to just how their teams operate and how they want their teams to operate. So on the one hand, I mean, yeah, like the way it all played out, I can understand people saying, why would you root against your own team? And I'm trying to figure out who was the player on the Sabres who just went ballistic on it. Like there was one guy who was very upset. I can't quite remember who it was.
That was Mike Weber. Mike Weber,
that's right.
He was wearing the A that night, and he called out the fans that night in the press conference after, in the locker room scrums after.
Yeah. And so, because I mean, look, like from a player perspective, guys are playing for jobs, and you don't want to go to a place where you're not appreciated because there's some management plan to kind of tank. But on the same token, as a fan, I mean, when you're looking at, and obviously Buffalo ended up with Jack Eichel, when you're looking at Connor McDavid, who, as great as Jack Eichel has been, I mean, if you're looking at a chance to draft Connor McDavid and have the number 1 pick when he's available, I mean, it's hard to really look at it a different way. I mean, yes, Edmonton hasn't been very, very good in 2 of the 3 years McDavid's been there, but by all accounts, I mean, he is far and away the most offensively talented player in the NHL, and maybe one of the most offensively talented players I've ever seen. So I think that I understand, where Mike Weber was coming from. I understand if there are people who were like, come on, give me a break. Why are you guys doing this? But on the other hand, I also totally understand where fans are coming from, because look, like I've been there. I mean, when a season just completely has gone away and you're gone by the wayside, and you know that there's absolutely nothing for the team to play for. I mean, as a fan, you don't care if a guy's playing for a job or playing for another contract. Like, you want your team to do well in the future, and in that situation, the plan was to try to draft number 1 or number 2. I mean, even though the Sabres never said that was the plan, from a management perspective, it was pretty clear with a lot of the moves they made that it was. And as a fan, you're just, I guess, kind of going along with what management wanted to do.
So 3 years ago, you wrote an article for PuckDaddy calling for Arizona and Carolina to tank like they've never tanked before, so that Eichel or McDavid didn't end up in Edmonton or Buffalo. Basically, so they can go to Carolina or Arizona and save hockey in those cities and push the game forward and go to places where they had high potential for growth. And since the Sabres drafted Eichel, they've still been a shitstorm, to say the least. How do you look?
I forgot there's a cursing podcast. I like it.
How do you look back on the? And I wanted to talk to you because I feel like this article is still very fitting, and you're kind of right. I think it still kind of holds true. How do you look back on the article you wrote today?
Wait, I want to hear that again. I was right when I wrote that.
I think it still holds true now. Honestly, the Sabres are garbage, and
Look, buddy, we're not going to keep saying it. You did a good job, and perhaps you were correct. So talk about it, all right?
No, because I want to go back to that. First off, I wrote that when I was so sick. I had the worst cold ever. I was on about 5 different types of quill when I wrote it. It was at a time when I was at PuckDaddy where I thought I had to be humorous like the rest of the blog, which we learned in time really wasn't my role and shouldn't have been my role. So there was that. Clearly, it was the most provocative thing I wrote when I was there. It was the thing that elicited the most response from any fan base. I don't know if I was trending in Buffalo at one point, but it certainly felt like it. My mentions on Twitter were totally miserable. And I learned a lesson that day, which was to not go for cheap clicks with a hot take. So I will, to start out, my take on that article, that's sort of where I was at the time when I wrote it. Moving forward, clearly you look at Edmonton and you look at Buffalo and you look at Arizona, you look at Carolina. Carolina, they've been a little bit better, I guess, more consistently better than the other two teams. Edmonton did make the playoffs and probably should have advanced to the second round last year. I wouldn't say should have. They sort of, I don't know. They were very close. They had a lead in Game 7. So, but the Ducks played really well in that. I was actually at that game. But anyway, clearly getting those two generational players, because look, they're still very young. It's not like it put Buffalo and Edmonton ahead of, say, Arizona and Carolina. It's not like I look at those 4 teams and I say, okay, well, Edmonton has a lot of potential because they have McDavid, but what do they have around him besides Leon Draisaitl? It's not a lot. Buffalo, because obviously it's a Buffalo podcast, I think the thought process around everything was, okay, we get Jack Eichel. Other players are going to want to come here. They got Ryan O'Reilly also, so you kind of had your 1-2 punch at center. You ended up eventually getting Kyle Oposo. They traded for Robin. Was it a trade for Robin Lehner? I think it was.
Yeah,
right?
they gave up their second first-round pick that year.
Yeah, it was a trade for Robin Lehner, who Tim Murray knew very well and thought could be a starting goaltender in the league. And granted, has played okay for the Sabres since he got there. And they got Evander Kane, too. I think that was in the same year. It was sort of trying to make a team that could quickly turn the page off the tank job. And granted, they never came out and said it was a tank job. And push forward. But really, I don't know, like, you heard so much about the culture there, the culture. And I wonder if there's just so much residual from that tank or from that year that, and Eichel is a part of it to some respect, not that he was part of that team, but it's the whole goal was to get him. And I just wonder if that's been just impossible for them to get through. And yes, Jack's been injured a couple of times. Jack Eichel's been injured a couple times, but I just wonder if the decision to go all in on getting one of those two players cost them from a cultural perspective. Because look, even though Edmonton has been off for a long, long time, with the exception of last year, at least they didn't not try to win. Buffalo tried to not win. I'm not gonna. Even though they didn't say they tried to not win, it certainly appeared that way with a lot of the personnel moves they made, and understandably so. Look at who was available in that draft. So, but I think there's certainly some residual from that, and I think that you're seeing that. And I've known Phil Housley for a number of years. I used to cover him in Nashville, and I haven't been around the Sabres much this year in regards to, with the exception of that one game when I work for the Kings, covering their insider blog. But ultimately, I think he's a good culture guy. I think he's a guy who can help turn it around. I don't know Jason Botterill very well, but I think he does care. But I think at the end of the day, there needs to be a big culture shift there, because I think you see a lot of residual from that year. And as I said, there's tons of potential in Buffalo as a hockey city. If they're I just remember everyone seems to forget where the first Winter Classic took place. It wasn't any of these MLB stadiums or college football stadiums or whatever. I mean, it was in Buffalo where the Buffalo Bills play, and that's because Buffalo is a great hockey city. So overall, I just kind of look at everything. And I just kind of say to myself, that's certainly there's a lot of potential there, but it's going to still take some work to get back to it.
Really appreciate you saying that you don't write stories for hot clicks anymore. And I'd love to give you the Twitter handles when we're done with this interview of some people in Buffalo that perhaps would could heed that advice and perhaps not piss off the entire community over and over repeatedly. But I digress. So here we are in 2018. It looks like the Sabres right now, as of this recording, are primed to get one of, at worst, they would be fourth under the new lottery system. Of course, when Jack and Connor were coming out, it was just one team won the lottery, and then the next teams all fell in line like that. Do you see, no, I don't want to turn this into like a draft blog or anything like that, but do you think that there's any sort of immediate type of player? We were debating today whether it's a defenseman or a wing that this team needs more. They seem okay at center. Goaltending seems to be okay. Is there one position that you would rather focus on at the top of the draft, just at all things being equal?
I mean, personally, I would say defense, in my opinion. But I would say defense, just because, I mean, I'm trying to think of how many games it took for the Sabres to have a defenseman to score a goal. It took quite a while.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. It took a very, very long time. So I would say that's my personal opinion. But, I think there's one thing that I assume Jason Botterill knows, again, from just his long experience and whatnot. In the NHL, just from a management perspective, is I really think that he understands that one player is not going to change the fortunes of an entire franchise. And I do think that now people in Buffalo kind of get that, whereas before, and look, I mean, we all sort of fell for it too, in the sense that these were two generational players with Eichel and McDavid. I think we now see that one player is not going to change everything. So I think you need to just have a good draft overall, ensure that you get what you need. But ultimately, in my opinion, I think that try to get some defense that's really moldable. Let Phil Housley work with them and see where they can go.
So now, you were here for that Kings game, and I don't know how dialed in you are to the Sabres, but you were at the Kings game, obviously, and it was one of the most pitiful games all season. I was there, and I couldn't stand the state of the third period because there was just nothing. It was all Kings. The Sabres were just there, going through the motions. What's your take on what you saw firsthand? What do you think got to be solved first with the Sabres?
Oh, the culture, without question. I mean, I think I alluded to that in an earlier answer. Is just the fact that it's so deeply ingrained right now. This losing culture, and I don't know who the issue is. I don't know, for example, if the Evander Kane trade fixes that, because I mean he's come out just on fire in San Jose. So I don't know what the deal was there, but and from what I've sort of gathered, just talking to people around the team and people that cover the team, I mean, it just sounds like he got more of a bad rap than he deserved. But overall, I'd say the culture. I mean, I just think that, again, there's so much residual from that tank season. They just need someone, and whether it's Phil Housley or by acquisition or even through the draft, I mean, they need someone to come in, make some changes. And I think that, but what I gather, Housley and Botterill are really trying to do so, but it just feels like there's such an oh no, here we go again situation with that team that it may just take more than 1 year to try to shift things around.
I feel like Kane was actually really good to start the year here, but it seems like once the new year hit, it's like he just flicked the switch and played not to get hurt. so he can go to a playoff team and play in the playoffs finally. And then he went to San Jose, and now he's on fire.
Yeah, I mean the other thing too is San Jose is a pretty fun place to play.
I bet.
So it is my favorite place to watch a game. Actually, I really love going there.
So I want.
Yeah, it's a pretty wonderful place overall. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
So I have this theory. It's kind of a hot take. I want to get your opinion on it real quick. I got a lot of hot takes. It's about your residual culture from the tank. Now, a lot of the sports media here, basically all the sports media here, they write for the papers and everything, are very anti-tank, and they're a bunch of crotch of the old man. And every week on every day, they're still on there bashing the tank, blah 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 blah. And these are the guys that are in the locker room all the time, and even these players out there spewing negativity. Do you think the media can have a hand in that culture hanging around?
I think so, to some degree. And I have a lot of friends in the Buffalo media. So I'm not going to say it's one of them or whatever. No, I mean, they're decent, honest, hardworking people. Like, they really are. But overall, I think that there is some of that to some degree. I do think that there is some level of residual in regards to just sort of the tank situation. Hey, can you hold on 1 second? Sorry. Hi, Josh. Sarah Cooper? Yes. Thank you.
Do I give it to you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. When you have a kid, you sometimes have to order from Grubhub. So I just had to get my order. Thank you very much.
That's
but
living that LA life, buddy. Living that LA life.
You know it. Yeah. This segment's sponsored by Grubhub. But I do think that there is some negativity that can come from it. Look, just different markets breed different media environments. I mean, you do see some players can't really excel in a place like Toronto or Montreal, but they can do really well in a place that doesn't quite have the same sort of media scrutiny. And I do think that reporters, in my opinion, in those markets are fair. It's just maybe more so the fact that everyone knows who you are, and because everyone knows who you are, all over town, there's just a constant microscope on you. And look, I mean, when there's a lot of losing for a number of years, I mean, media should be critical. But I mean, personally, I do think that, again, that the media in Buffalo, I do think they're very fair. And I do think that, they try to do their best. I wouldn't in any way, shape, or form pin this on them or their opinions on the team. I really do think that there is a good, hardworking group there that does try to point out things as they see them.
Let's get you out on this, Josh. I don't know how much contact you still have, but we really enjoyed that final, not that PuckDaddy is gone, mind you, but that final iteration of PuckDaddy with you and obviously Greg Wyshynski, but there was Jen Neal and Ryan Lambert, Sean Leahy, all of you guys. Was that the best experience that you had professionally, and what do you remember about those final couple years of the old version of PuckDaddy?
Oh, I personally enjoyed being able to sort of learn more about myself as a reporter. I really enjoyed the people that I interacted with overall, and just the people I met around the league. And there are some really, really good people in hockey. And they were just really good to work with overall. So it gave me the opportunity to do that. And I do feel like I'm better in a lot of ways just from my ability to sort of meet other people and see how they handle their jobs and work around just some incredible hockey people. It certainly was a good experience overall. No complaints here.
Awesome, man. Well, we thank you very kindly for coming on. I know it took a little bit of maneuvering, but living that dad life, and that's all good.
No, it's great. And if you ever talk to Sean Leahy, ask him about his love of trail mix. I'm sure he'll love to talk about that. one of the finest human beings I've ever met, Sean Leahy.
Oh yeah, and man, they were ruthless on whenever he would fill in on the old Merrick vs. Wyshynski podcast about that too. It was great.
He's
to hear that.
he's a great guy. One of the
Nice.
greatest human beings I think I've ever met. So
That's awesome.
you know, when Sean and I realized we had very similar senses of humor around hockey, I think we started to really hit it off. I mean, I'll still like there's certain just players that we find really funny. I mean, between like, you know, Thomas Hurdle's Instagram or like, you know, Ricard Raquel thanking the fans for, I guess, thanking someone or whoever it was for, I think it was the fans for him making the All-Star game, and while he was in Tahoe, going on a walk with his dog. I mean, these are like the types of things that I think Sean and I really enjoy. So, no, nothing but great things to say about him and others too. Everyone was great to work with overall.
Awesome. Very cool, man. Well, thanks for joining us, and God willing, we don't have to rehash this whole thing on the 5-year anniversary when the Sabres are winning the Stanley Cup, but you never know.
Yeah, well, when they're winning the Stanley Cup, and we can see Jack's wonderful tattoo.
God, that tattoo sucks so much.
I was just kind of floored by it.
Hey,
what is it with like these American guys with the big tattoos? I mean, you have him. Doesn't Austin Matthews have like a giant lion tattoo in his arm now or something like that?
I think so. I mean, to me, still the all-time one, and he's not American, but Tyler Sagan's just like complete
his arm tattoo.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it.
There's some terrible hockey tattoos, and Drew Stafford, Sabres legend Drew Stafford, he had a sleeve as well, and yeah, I don't even.
A lot of tattoos in hockey. I don't know if it's a Canadian thing or whatever, but a lot of tattoos in hockey.
You see them in all the other sports, but they're all covered up. In this sport.
Lots of tattoos in both hockey. I was thinking about this. So there's lots of tattoos in two things I enjoy: hockey and The Bachelor. Like everyone in that show has tattoos. Like it's unbelievable. Just like apparently in the last season, Ari had like a Les Mis tattoo or something like that.
Wow.
Which, yeah,
Ballsy.
I know. Yeah, I didn't
Really
even
put it all
realize
out
it
there.
at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize it until I was starting to listen to a podcast about reality TV, and they brought that up, and I was like, he's got a Jean Valjean tattoo? Like, what in the world? Like, are you kidding me?
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah, that must be part of the screener there. Like, you must have at least one, and it's got to be Broadway based, of course.
You never thought when you had me on we'd be talking about tattoos on The Bachelor.
No, and now is not the time to get into my dream of this cat's tattoo I've been designing for a couple years, but we'll talk about that in the next time you come on.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, take care.
And thanks again to Josh for joining us. True sign of his character is that he will own up to the fact that he maybe thinks that, much like Justin banging his phone into his microphone stand, some things don't stand the test of time when in the recorded medium. Josh is a cool dude. We're very thankful for him taking time out of his busy schedule to speak with us about Jack Eichel and the future of the Sabres team. It's about all you can really say about the Sabres at this point. A couple weeks left in the season. The other big notable hockey story from this weekend is we are 1 day removed from the 2018 Isabel Cup. The Buffalo Beats traveled to the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area and face the now Metropolitan Riveters. I'm doing my best to not have to put another dollar in the New York jar by remembering that they are now the Metropolitan Riveters in a close game. Unfortunately for the Buffalo side of things, the 7-1-6 side of things, the Riveters, a 1-0 victory, their first ever Isabel Cup. Great game, but Buffalo comes up just a little short.
We're going to actually talk to someone who was at the game, Nate Oliver, who writes for the Hockey Raiders. We're just going to give him a buzz here.
Give him the old buzzerino.
See what he's doing.
I hope he's willing to talk hockey. It'd be really awkward otherwise. He's going to call him and get his voicemail.
Hope it just works out and you can hear us.
Oh, we're doing this bit again. I love this bit.
Hello?
Hey, Nate.
Hey, Justin, what's going on?
You can hear us. This is wonderful.
It's much better than the last time I tried to call someone in the middle of the show.
How's it going, Nate? Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem at all, guys. Good to hear from you.
So this is Nate Oliver, writer of women's hockey and the Buffalo Buttes for the Hockey Raiders. Thanks for doing your thing, Nate. So you were over in New Jersey and were at the game where the Buttes lost 1-0.
Yeah, I was. It was definitely. I felt torn in a lot of ways. You know, obviously being a Buffalo boy and covering the Buttes, I was really hoping that the team would pull it out. But then again, it was also really nice to be out on the ice for the ceremony afterward, and kudos to the Riveters as well too for the job that they did. It was definitely an experience, to say the least.
Did you touch the cup?
I did not touch the cup that day. I have touched the cup before, but not not at that game. No.
So this was the 7th game this season that these two teams played against each other. 3 that went to the Riveters in the regular season. Buttes came back, responded, snapped the Riveters' 11-game winning streak. They won 3 of their own. 2 road games late in the season. Best of 7 series goes to the Riveters. What did you see between these two teams in a 1-0 game, other than maybe an incredible Alexa Grushow goal that allowed the Riveters to hold off Buffalo here for the championship?
Oh yeah, I'm sure you guys saw the comparisons that were being made to Bobby Orr with the way that she scored that goal flying through the air there. So it was really interesting. I had a chance to speak with Harrison Brown after the game, and he had said that he going into this final, it really could have gone either way, and you didn't know how it was going to go between the two teams. I think the thing that really solidified it for the Riveters was that they never varied at all. They never wavered. They kept their even down to the most minute detail, whether it was just that first step, that first stride, that first crisp pass. They played that consistently throughout the entire game. Buffalo, to their credit, stuck with them through the first period. And then I think in the second, we started to look a bit tired. And then by the time the third period came around, the Buttes looked a bit sluggish, and that might have been the difference. They certainly held their own out there, but I would have to chalk up the win to the Riveters for the fact that they played their game and there was never any variance. They just appeared to control the entire time. And,
of course, another key aspect of that game, especially in such a close game, talk about the goaltending in that game. Of course, it's noted that Buffalo has an MVP candidate in Amanda Levier in goal, and the Riveters, as I know Phil Jubileo mentioned on the broadcast a few times, I noticed the Twitter moniker of Brickwell Fitzy Katie Fitzgerald gets the shutout, and just it looked like just an amazing defensive game. These two teams so close to each other in so many aspects, and one great play by the league MVP makes the difference. And Nate, I'm curious how it felt to physically be there at the game. I know sometimes the atmosphere doesn't come through as much on the broadcast. How was being in that packed house at Barnabas for the game between these two teams?
It was absolutely fantastic, and I probably can't do it justice in words. Buffalonians should definitely be proud of the crowd that we had there, and that came out and made the trip. But a large contingent of them were players' parents that play for the parents that have kids that play for the Buttes. They were there in attendance, and they actually had a fairly sizable crowd. So they got the "Let's Go Buffalo" chant going more than once, and they tried to outdo the Riveters fans. That they were pretty hard to contend with as well too. But that place was absolutely electric. You could just feel it in the air, and when Gruschow scored that first goal, they exploded, and it was definitely kind of the happening place, I guess you could say. Spotted in the crowd, Ron Duguay was there, Anson Carter, they were there. Danny Ryland was out, around and about. So it was definitely something to see, and you could just feel that it was energized and certainly a spectacle to be part of. Again, like I said earlier, despite the loss for the Buttes, it was pretty magical to be there and take it in person.
We're now 3 years into the NWHL officially, 3 different champions. I think there were a lot of questions in the offseason with the centralization of the Olympic athletes about how the NWHL, the quality of play and competition would hold up. And just if you want to speak for a little bit on exactly how this league came about this year in terms of I felt like this was the most competitive year that they've had, and in spite of a lot of the top names in women's hockey not being a part of it, I think the league has somehow continued to find even a higher standard of quality of play every year that it's gone on.
Oh, absolutely, and I think to be honest with you, I would say that I would agree completely. This year, the third year was really the one where you saw the competitive level just boost without the Olympians, and we saw some new faces that really came to the forefront. I mean, you look at Buffalo. In particular, you got players like a Colleen Murphy. I mean, how good did she get as the season went along? She shaked off some of the rust, maybe hadn't played at this level since college, and then her ice time just increased dramatically. Craig Muni, you could tell, just had confidence in her and was utilizing her in every situation, be it shorthanded. There was a few instances where she was out there having to kill 5-on-3s in games throughout the season. Really was able to step forward like that. And then I think I had thought about it early in the year and kind of mentioned it to a few different folks. Jackie Greco really was just spectacular. I wish that the league almost gave out a most improved award. Not that Jackie Greco's level of play was ever really lacking, but it was just how much further she brought to her game going into the season. So I think you saw players like that really step to the forefront, and it happened league-wide too, not just in Buffalo. I mean, it was really everywhere. Each team had players come to the forefront that maybe weren't expected to, and all they needed was a little bit of opportunity.
I know so much is up in the air from season to season with how contracts are season to season, and looking at next year seems so far away now as we're just day one of the offseason. But if there's anything in particular, what are you most looking forward to next season for season 4, or that you're hoping for you'll see more in the forefront here as the league moves forward for another calendar year?
Well, obviously, we hear the rumblings about possible expansion. I think everybody's heard about maybe a team being in Pittsburgh. And I would hope that wouldn't happen through a relocation of any sort from one of the founding four. But if we brought in a fifth team, I think that would be something that would pique a lot of interest in the league and just expand it that much more, both literally speaking and then, in the figurative sense. And then, you look around North America and there's fans everywhere that tweet or make comments on Facebook. I wish my city had an NWHL team, and certainly in the markets that are in this area, whether it be a Pittsburgh, a Philadelphia, a Washington, D.C. So I think that in particular would be really exciting should there be another team added into the fold. But I think what I would like to see the most is the players that did come in, the newcomers, even, if we look at Buffalo in particular, the Adrian line players, Caitlin Shroka, Kristen Lewicki, and Sarah Shurup, they almost immediately headed back to their hometown out in Michigan shortly after the Isabel Cup had ended. I would love to see players like that come back to Buffalo. I wouldn't want anybody to be without a job, and we get so many new household names that we can be proud of and be excited about, and I'd really love to see all those players return.
So obviously the Buttes were purchased by the Pagulas earlier this year. What do you think that means for the Buttes going forward? Do you think we'll see lots of players trying to flock to Buffalo for the stability they can offer now without that money they got backing them?
Yeah, I would say that most assuredly. In a way, it's kind of funny how that works because in some ways it's wonderful. It's wonderful for the Buttes for sure, and it's wonderful for Buffalo in that there's a financial backing that adds legitimacy to the team and adds it to the league as well. There's another side of it, though, too, in that with the other three teams, I had a chance to drive to Connecticut for the final regular season game, and you can see some disparity there between, with the Connecticut Whale not having a team that they're associated with or owned by, and I think there's some difference there, too, but that would make Buffalo a landing spot for players that they would want to come here and want to play here. And I think maybe, and this is what I think we all hope for, is that it's going to create a ripple effect that more NHL teams are going to want to line themselves, be in line with NWHL teams and grow the game that way. I mean, the fact that the Riveters have that support from the Devils, a couple of their players were, I think Katie Fitzgerald was actually one of them, had been on NHL Network. There is that support there. And I think with the Pagulas purchasing the Buttes, that opens the floodgates, most assuredly. And I think you're going to want to see that support, especially you tie that into the fact that the women's Olympics were so successful for hockey, for women's hockey at the Olympics. That really just got the buzz going out there about women's hockey. And I think, as is the case in any business and in any sport, is you want to capitalize on hot opportunities. So if the hot thing right now is women's hockey and you can really grow it and brand it, how wonderful would that be for the league if other teams jumped on board with what the Pagulas have done?
Well, that's all we got for you, Nate. I know it's kind of late. We want to keep it very long, and I appreciate coming on tonight.
Yeah, before we let you go, Nate, what is the best way for our listeners to find your writing and your views on everything on hockey so they can follow along with you?
You can definitely give me a follow on Twitter. I would most appreciate that. It's at Nathaniel A. Oliver, OLIVR. There wasn't enough room to fit the E on there, but you can follow me right on Twitter. And then if you go to thehockeywriters.com, just do a search for me. You can find all my articles, and I cover primarily the NWHL and the Buffalo Buttes, but I also do a lot of women's hockey at the college level and internationally as well, too.
Perfect. Thanks again, Nate, so much for coming on. Look forward to seeing you again at the rink sometime soon.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye, Nate.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Nate.
What a nice guy.
Yeah, Nate's a cool dude.
And good writer, too. So definitely check him out. You'll see him mentioned in our Twitter and everything if you didn't catch his spelling of how his last name is. We're along with him. We also had to drop one character from our Twitter name because it didn't quite fit for character limits. So with him on that. So thanks to Nate. That about wraps it up here for us tonight.
Let's wrap it up. It's thanks to Josh Cooper, thanks to Nate, and thanks to the Buttes for allowing Jeff, Eric, and myself to do the thing that we do.
It's a lot of fun, and hopefully we can reflect on this again in another 3 years of doing this and talk about how much the league is continuing to grow. So, and thanks to that interview that guy agreed to 2 years ago that we were able to drag up today because Justin had some incredible levels of foresight. Thanks to Ted's Hot Dogs for sponsoring the 716 Sports Podcast. Thanks for subscribing, and have a great night.